Politicians love to use Venezuela as a little bit of a boogeyman scare tactic. What happened in Venezuela could happen right here. And yeah, their economy collapsed. Things aren't doing so hot down there. But why do Republicans love to use Venezuela as a scare tactic? Is it because they know that 2/3 of Republican voters do not have a 4-year college degree? Is it because they know that more than half of Americans read below a 6th grade reading level? Is it because they know the do-your-own-research crowd doesn't actually want to do their own research? They'd rather just parrot something they heard on Fox News and claim it as a fact? The same Fox News that had to pay $787 million over U.S. election lies? Yes. And people on the right tend to also look for overly simplistic answers. Just take a look at Donald Trump versus Kamala Harris's website for a second. And before I show you, remember this. A little bit ago, I saw a video right here on TikTok where, man on the street interview, someone said, have you read Harris's plan? She doesn't have plans. And he pulled it up and he said, well, here are the plans. And he said, man, I'm not reading all of that. When you click on platforms right here on the Trump website and you scroll down a little, these are his platform, issues or goals, and they're all one sentence. They're all written in all uppercase. A lot of them have exclamation points at them by far. They're very, very simple. And if Trump's plans look like they were written by a 12-year-old, that is not an accident. That is by design. Remember, 54% of Americans read below a 6th grade level. And even when you go all the way to the bottom and you hit click here to read more, even then his more in-depth plans are like a sentence or two. Maybe a paragraph here, a paragraph there. And now compare that to Kamala Harris's plans. You scroll down a little bit and she has categories with, look at everything that is here. All of this information. It's more than a sentence. It's more than a paragraph. These are real plans, but nobody wants to read all of this stuff. So it's easy for people on the right to just outright lie to their audience because they know no one's going to look it up. So let's talk about Venezuela. So as usual, when we're talking about something very complicated like global economics, the simplest answer is usually the one that the most people just want to believe because anything more is, it's complicated. And Venezuela is a great example of this scare tactic. It's really easy to use. You just say, socialism, like what they have in Venezuela, where their economy has collapsed, and people who don't want to do any research or delve a little deeper into the subject just go, socialism, bad. Venezuela, collapse. America, Venezuela? But what actually happened in Venezuela has more to do with government and economic mismanagement and some U.S. sanctions and some greed than socialism. Here's why. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the entire world, and their economy was built on this and only this. So when things were great and when oil was crushing it and at all-time highs in the early 2000s, Venezuela was making a lot of money. And with that money, they implemented a lot of social policies like socialized medicine. Great. But when oil crashed in 2014 or something like that, their economy crashed because they were solely reliant on making money through their oil. Nothing else. So the government that had to fund all of these social programs through the money they were making from oil, and they weren't making the money from oil anymore, they lost their main source of revenue. To say that Venezuela collapsed because of socialism is not necessarily true. In fact, it's not really true at all. If you wanted to use some examples of socialized policies around the world that have worked, you'd look to countries like Norway and Denmark and Sweden and Canada and the UK. All other developed nations have united or universal healthcare. And their economies aren't terrible. And their people are happier, healthier, and they live longer. They also don't have something called medical bankruptcy. They also don't see over 40,000 people get murdered every single year because they can't afford health coverage. That only happens here in the United States, where people go, hey, listen, I'm sorry that your mom is dying of cancer, but our shareholders would be really pissed if we spent all of that money taking care of every single mom and kid who was dying. But you know what? Hey, Fuck it. Let's just keep using Venezuela as a scare tactic, even if it's not entirely accurate or not even true at all, because, it seems to work. Because people don't read, people don't research. And a lot of Republicans and Republican-controlled media know that their voting base is dumb as shit, and they won't fact-check a thing. And I know videos like this get me in a lot of trouble, and people get all twisted, and they cry in the comments. And I'll also note that this is not an economic channel. Predominantly, this is a channel for investing, stock market, learning how to retire early. So if any of that interests you, remember, bulls make money, bears make money, pigs get slaughtered, and smart investors always smash that follow.